It's 6:36. My name is Jenny Rivera, and I chair the Holyoke City Council Public Safety Committee. And before we begin our agenda, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the members of the committee, which is to my left, Councilor Patty Devine, and also Israel Rivera. I'm not sure where he's at. And additionally, present today, we have our mayor, Joshua Garcia. We have Leslie Ward from the Building Department. We have Councilor Cocaine Givner. We have Councilor Mike Sullivan. And just to make it clear, Mike Sullivan does not work for the Building Department. We have Councilor David Bartley. I think
that's it.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
Today's meeting is being held in chambers on Zoom and is being broadcasted live on public access channel, and we are being recorded by Zoom. We are being streamed and are in person. I also want to state that the purpose of today's meeting is to address and provide the mayor, actually, the opportunity to inform the council and the general public about his plans and policies related to bringing multifamily units up to code.
I'd like to make a motion, if I could, to take up item number 1.
Second?
Second? Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You want to read it, Jenny?
Where's my... Item 1 is minutes of September 10th meeting.
Make a motion that the minutes... So I would like to take a motion to take up the order, item number 1 on our agenda, filed 10/15/24 by myself and Jenny Rivera. And Jenny can read that.
Item 2, like Councilor Devine stated, filed by her and myself, that the mayor issue an executive order temporarily suspending all fines related to Section 110?
Yeah, 110.
110-7, periodic inspection of the Mass State Building Codes for a 6-month period until all records have been completely reviewed by the Building and Law Departments. Further order that all current fines already paid should be rescinded or held in escrow until all records have been reviewed by the Building Department and the Law Department. The mayor's here. You may come in. Ms. Ward, you could come in.
Or you can use that. Well, yeah, if there's 2 of you, maybe. Okay. Oh, Jane's going to come in. Yeah, I didn't. Just ask people to introduce themselves.
And I'll just have you each introduce yourself to the public.
Joshua Garcia, Mayor.
Leslie Ward, Building Commissioner.
I'm just going to turn that on, Leslie.
Make sure it's green.
There you go.
Leslie Ward, Building Commissioner.
Jane Manteleschi, Assistant City Solicitor.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and councilors. Thank you all. I'm happy to be here tonight, go over the concerns raised regarding the periodic inspections and code compliance with 3 units and up. Those that know me well know that I appreciate open and transparent discussions. It's formats like this that allows for the necessary checks and balances we need when concerns come up to achieve our shared goal. Our shared goal around safety and compliance. How we get there is always the challenge and the debate, no matter what the issues are or what quality of life challenge that comes up when we're trying to overcome. So many times we have come in front of the council for other issues, and certainly there's always this agreement on the goal. How we get there is where the challenge is, but love working together with the council and figure out how we can always be better. So thank you so much for this format. Now, I have been paying attention and listening to the concerns raised, some very, very legitimate, many of which is just simply untrue, and we do hope that after the presentation tonight, we offer the necessary clarification to mitigate concerns, specifically on the process, and also address issues around fines, among other concerns that we've been hearing. It is important to make clear, counselors, and for the members of the public, that this is most certainly not at all, not even a little bit, about cash grabbing or bringing any extra money into the city. It's about bringing these properties into compliance. And I understand there were concerns about our process, concerns about timing, if whether work can be done on time. Tonight, our team here is who have been actively leading the charge. They're going to present the clarification necessary, and they're also going to present a path to achieve our shared goal of safety and compliance, but also being sensitive to the concerns raised about fines and about timing. So we certainly heard that. So with that being said, I'm now going to pass it to the Building Commissioner, Leslie, and the city's Associate Solicitor, Jane, who's going to go over the presentation and dive right into the questions and answers afterward. I believe Jeffrey was given the slides, if we can get it up on the screen. And I think you have copies of the slides, right? Everybody has copies.
Can everybody see this or that one? Either
People can
one?
see the screen clearly. And I think Jeffrey's is in control of the next. Okay.
He is, yeah, so I'll let him know. So I figured, thank you for having us today. So I figured probably the best way to go about this is if we are allowed to go through the slides and the presentation, and then you guys can note down any questions or thoughts you may have, and then we'll answer those at the end, if that's okay. All right. On the first slide, just these periodic inspections are done pursuant to 780 CMR 110.7 of the Massachusetts Code of Regulations. And Jeffrey, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, thank you. That regulation provided, and this is directly from the building code, that the building official, who in this case is you can go back, Jeffrey. Thank you. In this case is our building commissioner, shall, meaning that they have an obligation to, it's not a may, it's a shall, inspect periodically existing buildings and structures and parts thereof in accordance with Table 110, which is on the next slide. So this is the code reference that gives the building commissioner the obligation to actually do these inspections. Jeffrey, next slide, please. Now, this is hard to read, I know, but this is the table from the building code, this Table 110 that was referenced in that previous code section, that lays out how often the inspections need to be done and how long that inspection is good for. In this case, in this specific instance, we are talking about residential properties, multifamilies for 3 units and up. And those inspections, and Commissioner Ward can correct me if I'm wrong, are to be done every 5 years and are good for 5 years.
Correct.
Okay. Jeffrey, next slide, please. I also wanted to provide the council and the members of the public who are here today our specific city ordinance reference, which it is section 1831 of our city ordinances, which provide that if any person fails to comply with, and this is B, any person who fails to comply with any order of the building commissioner shall be liable for a criminal fine of not more than $300. Each day or part of a day that the violation continues or exists shall constitute a separate violation. So that is where we're getting the $300 per day, and that is the authorized under our ordinances.
Jane, excuse me, can I just interrupt you for a quick second?
Sure.
Right up there, the first paragraph, pursuant of Section 18-31 of city ordinances, the city can issue fines up to $300.
That's correct.
Who makes that decision?
The building commissioner.
So somebody could get 100, somebody could get 150, somebody get 300.
Right, depending upon what their, I mean, it has to be applied universally for each person in similar circumstances. So, as I'll state later, we're doing, the building commissioner decided it was Mr. Lajimonier at the time, decided that it would be $300 for properties of 4 units and up, and $100 per day for 3 units, and that's it, just 3 units, because there's not below, so 3 units. Okay? So next slide, please, Jeffrey. Thank you. So this is a letter, an actual letter that went out. It actually was a second notice, but it references, this one went in 2019, but it references a first notice that went in 2018. But the building department, as early as 2017 and 2018, knew that this was an ongoing issue for the city. And so the building department did send out notices and requests for these inspections back in 2017 and 2018, looking to get inspections and for compliance under the building code. Jeffrey, next slide, please. This is also language from the building code. It's footnotes right under the table 110 of that 780 CMR that we had shown before. And I brought this one here just to specifically give note to footnote 5, which says it is the responsibility of the building owner to meet the inspection requirements in this table for continued use and occupancy. So there is a requirement for an owner, a property owner, to meet these obligations. Jeffrey, next slide, please. Thank you. Unfortunately, enforcement was extremely difficult after these initial letters went out in 2017 and 2018. There was tremendous staffing issues within the city's building department, and there was also, the city did not have a municipal hearings officer, so it really did frustrate the city's ability to ensure compliance and enforcement, which is why back then there were no fines issued at that point. Next slide, please, Jeffrey. Thank you. Oh. Can we go back a little? Yep, there we go. Thank you. So the building department was able to get staffed up a little bit more, and this was a continued concern on behalf of multiple city departments, just safety of our multi-unit residential buildings. So in late 2023 and early 2024, the city sent out another round of these compliance letters seeking to entice property owners to respond and have these certificates of inspection issue in compliance with their obligations under the building code. Next slide, please. Thank you. Some property owners were responsive, some were not, and fines began and continued to accrue. The next steps were by the building department was to have invoices to try to, again, entice property owners to come in to say this is how many fines have accrued to date. Please come in, make communication with the building department regarding getting your certificate of compliance and reaching out to the law department essentially to speak to them about fees. Again, what I just spoke to previously with Councilor Devine, the building department's discretion was for 3-unit properties to be fined at a rate of $100 per day, and 4-unit and above properties were fined at a rate of $300 per day. Next slide, please, Jeffrey. Thank you. So fine negotiations. So the law department really got involved with respect to negotiating any fines that had accrued in connection with these certificates of inspection. And as I just stated, I believe somewhat at the October 16th, I think it was the 16th or the 15th, 16th, City Council meeting, the Law Department has been really trying to work with the Building Department and the property owners to do as much as we can with respect to waiver or substantial reduction of the fines once the property comes into compliance. So it was determined that by the Law Department that we would be waiving fines in total for property owners who were, one, responsive to the notices within a grace period that was provided in the notices and our ordinances, provided documentation of attempted compliance within the grace period, and a certificate of inspection actually issued within 3 months of the end of the grace period. In general, that gives about, from the time a letter goes out, and again, this letter that I'm referring to are the letters that went out in 2023, 2024, not the ones that went out in 2017, 2018. So that's generally around a 6-month period from the time the letter goes out until the time that a building or the certificate of inspection is issued, that in the Law Department's judgment that was showing good faith attempt at compliance. So we figured that was a good period for waiver in full of these fines. Next slide, please, Jeffrey. So for property owners that did not meet those requirements, we still wanted to make sure we were attempting to work with them. So for any property owner that was unresponsive during the grace period, or maybe responded with an application but then did no additional follow-up in the line of attempting to reach out to contractors or attempting to get work completed to move forward towards getting those certificates of inspection issued, and they failed to obtain an inspection and cause a certificate of inspection to issue within those 3 months of the grace period, but now they have one, we are reducing their fines to 20% of the total that had accrued as of the date of the 3-month period after the grace period. If the above failures were due to a service or a notice error, then, and that can be proved through evidence, then we have had that situation in a couple cases. And if that is the case, then we have been waiving those as well, because that, if they did not have notice of something, then that is not necessarily their fault. And so the Law Department saw that as good faith as well, and we're willing to waive those in full. Next slide, please, Jeffrey. Thank you. So since these invoices have went out at the end of September and beginning of October, there are property owners and also city councilors, right, that have concerns over what the compliance process has been. And some of the examples of some concerns we've received is notice of the request for the inspection, as I just stated before, a short period of time for compliance, continued accrual of daily fines, and unpaid fines being leaned against the real estate. The city has, I can't tell you how many meetings that Commissioner Ward and Mayor Garcia and I have had within the last few weeks about this, and trying to really figure out a way that we could fine-tune the process and make sure that all property owners make sure they know what their obligations are. So we have some proposed, next slide, please, Jeffrey, thank you. So we came up with a plan, and the Commissioner Ward did come up with a very good and comprehensive plan of next steps going forward. There are a lot here, and I think I'm actually going to defer to her to go over that, because she has put a lot of time and effort into this. So I will hand it over to Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. So what we're proposing is kind of a revamp of how the structure of both extensions and not the fines, but grace periods have been issued. So what I'm going to do is issue different extensions on top of what has already been granted. So in order to qualify for the new extensions, the property owner must not have had C of I notices issued by the city prior to 1/1/23. Or they can demonstrate that the notices have not been received with evidence. And if a property owner has not applied for a C of I inspection, the property owner...
Excuse me, a CFI, are you saying?
C of I.
So certificate of inspection.
Certificate of inspection.
Thank you.
If the property owner has not applied for a certificate of inspection with the building department, the property owner must immediately apply for a certificate of inspection, whether they're ready for the inspection or not. As most that are familiar with the process know, that there's supporting documentation that must be received in order to obtain an inspection from a building inspector. Such things as fire alarms, exterior egress certifications, that sort of thing. So that documentation, even if you don't have all of that, the property owner must at least apply for the inspection with the form that's listed on the website and is available in the building department, and pay the fee, which is a small fee. So those two things must be done. The qualifying extensions are as follows. For an owner-occupied 5 dwelling units or less, I am going to issue a 2-year grace period from the date of the initial notification. This extension will apply only to owners who own the building they live in and no other multifamily buildings of 3 or more units in the city of Holyoke. To prove that, there must be evidence that you are owner-occupied for this to apply to you, such as car registration or something similar. The second extension that I'm proposing is non-owner-occupied 5 dwelling units and less, a 1-year extension from the date of the initial notification. And all other buildings, 6 dwelling units and up, a 6-month grace period from the date of the initial notification. Now, again, in order to qualify for these, you have to not have had a notification from the building department in 2017, 2018, prior to 1/1 of 2023. Essentially, if you got the notice, and we know that you got the notice through a certificate, through a mail card or return receipt card, or something to that effect, you'd have to prove that you didn't get that notice somehow in order to qualify. Beyond that, if you do not
Jeffrey, can you
qualify-
go to the next slide?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Thank you. If you do not qualify for one of these extensions and you want to stop the accrual of the daily fines, okay, what must happen is we can pause these fines only if an application is received and paid for in the building department with active communication and supporting documentation for any delays in the progress of the work needed. So I have to see contracts, I have to see receipts from vendors that you are actively trying to bring your building up to code and get your exterior egress certification and that sort of thing, the alarm system and that sort of thing. So the applicant must demonstrate work progress through the contracts or invoices, as I just said. So a 6-month grace period will be given. It's kind of a pause on those fees. And at the end of the 6-month pause, if the certificate of inspection is not issued in compliance at the end of that time period, then the fees will again begin to accrue at the point at which they were paused. Okay, so they will add on to where they were paused. Okay, so this proposal was designed to give the owner-occupied small family-oriented homes who can't necessarily afford to pay these exorbitant fines some time and some grace with the 2-year grace period. The larger buildings or the non-owner occupied, the income properties, they're purely income, non-owner occupied, 5-family and less, those people still do have the 1-year grace period. So that is a much better time period, I think. And this is really something that we're trying to get the larger buildings into compliance, which is what the initial round of periodic inspection letters that were sent out in 2017, 18, 19 were targeted for. Those larger buildings, we needed to get those buildings done first. So that is why, and for those of you who may not know, I was in the building department as a local inspector during that time period. So some of those letters were issued by me, but most of them were issued by Damian Cody, the commissioner at the time. So that is all I have for this, and if you want to take over.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. Jeffrey, next slide, please. Thank you. So just property owners' next steps. Under this proposal, if you own a 3-unit property and above, even if you don't think you've gotten a notice, or you haven't gotten a notice, or you have, any of the above, if you own a 3-unit property and above, please reach out to the building department to start that certificate of inspection process with an application, and then there's a fee. I think it's between $50 and $100, $50 and $150?
$50 and $100.
$50 and $100 for the application fee. So please reach out. Again, even if you didn't get the letter, because it is applying to 3-unit properties and above. So if you do own one of those properties and above, please reach out. If you have had the certificate of inspection issue and you have been informed you owe fines due to that process, please reach out to myself in the law department, and we will discuss those and work with you on those fines. Next slide, Jeffrey. This one's the big one, questions, thoughts. I hope we've provided both the counselors and the public some additional information and our hopeful process as to what we can do going forward to make sure that this can get all resolved in an amicable manner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So right now, I'd like to recognize that we have Councilor Israel Rivera has joined us. We also have online Attorney Bissonette and Councilor and President Tessa Murphy Bombaletti. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the floor first to our councilors for any questions they may have, and then we'll go with the audience.
Yeah, I do whenever you're ready. Okay.
Councilor Rivera?
I can go first if you want me to. That's fine.
No, go ahead.
That's cool. I guess for me, thank you for the presentation, and thank you to the public for coming to fight for what you feel like is right. All right. I think I got here a little late because I was with my daughters and we went to Pix to eat some pizza. So my bad. I apologize. For me, when I first heard of this, it made sense, and it still kind of makes sense. I think the part where I'm a little stressed out about, and I can see where property owners are stressed out, is even with the guidelines that I just saw now for next steps, in my opinion, and I own a property, but I only own a single family home, it doesn't feel equitable in a sense, right? It feels like this is part of the problem. So where do we, the guidelines, the next steps? These just came now, or we came together as a committee? Were there various different people that came together to kind of put this together? Because for me, it's like, it kind of, for lack of better terms, it sounds like some people are screwed regardless. And I don't, so I served prison time, and I know that's nobody's business. So I know if you don't follow the law, there are consequences for that. But I never really learned anything to that extent. So to me, it's like, what is the goal here and what we're trying to do as a community, right? If the goal is to bring everybody up to compliance, then can we just bring people up to compliance? If a year passes and they don't come to compliance, then that's cool. You got to face the consequences, right? But it sounds like some people do get a year, some people get 2 years, some people get 6 months. It's not that clear for me. And if it's not that clear for me, then it wouldn't be that clear for the public. And that is that for me is not fair. That's where and I don't want to say it's mistransparency and that we're trying to hustle anybody. And I heard some people say money grab. I don't think that's the intention, but I could see how it feels that way, right? So for me, it's like, where are the foundations for a lot of these newer guidelines? And if you didn't come up to code since 2017, good luck, right? But like, moving forward, for the people that are here that are concerned about their 4-family home, their 2-family home, 3-family home, or wherever it's at, and let's say you've invested $12,000 to $15,000 to come up to code, but you're still telling me I got to pay 20% of what I owe, and that 20% is probably like another $7,000 to $8,000 on top. How is, like, what's the goal here?
That's actually not how it's reading. So these new extensions will go above and beyond the
But
fee
for those
waivers.
that qualify.
For those that qualify. So to qualify, you had to have not gotten a letter prior to
So do we have a
January.
number of how many people don't qualify automatically?
I do not. I don't have that.
Because
offhand.
that would help to gauge, right, how many people are actually impacted by this. Because it could be that 5 people qualify, or it could be that 50 people qualify. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where I'm at. Where, like, how do we know? Because it sounds like some of this is arbitrary, in the sense that we just came together and put it together now because we have to. And I'm not trying to like slander anybody or anything like that. But for me, it's, I know my microphones don't work, bro. Like, I know what we're dealing with here, right? When we're talking about our government and how we do things in our government. So for me, it's like, where is the background research that came to the conclusion, to the guidelines that we're at now?
So these are guidelines that, based on my experience as a building inspector, most of the folks that this situation covers, that's all of the people that have gotten notices. The majority of them are going to get their fines waived because of these new.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
That's good to
The
hear.
majority are going to get their fines waived completely. If they bring their buildings up to code, okay? That's the whole goal. And I'm extending the time on all of that. Now, the folks that got notices back in 2017, 18, 19, 20, they've had their time, okay? Those are the folks that I'm not willing to give big extensions for. I am willing to pause the daily accrual of fines, however, for a period of 6 months to allow those folks to come up to code, bring their buildings up to code, okay? One of the things that I think that we're trying to alleviate with all of this is having our notices from the building department ignored. And that has been a historic thing. And so even though we have not had a lot of staff in our department, that doesn't mean that our notices were frivolous. They
Thank you.
weren't.
Thank you.
Counselor. I just wanted to make sure, because I know Councilors Rivera made some, just the questions you brought up, is it clarified? Because I want to make sure that the concerns you mentioned, that it's not vague or unclarified or anything.
No. I think I would say they've clarified for me, but I wouldn't say that for other people in the public. And again, not everyone's going to hear what they want to hear, because this is a situation where it's like that. I know that I've been in it. I've grew up in buildings my whole life. I'm a product of subsidized housing, all of that. So like, I get the point of bringing people up to compliance, but at the same time, I also get the point of some people are there's an unintended consequence that's happening right now. And I want to make sure that the unintended consequence is somehow being resolved within the system, and it sounds like it is. And I think that for us to continue working forward in that direction to make it better for everyone ultimately. And thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, I have, the law department kind of maintains our own little side spreadsheet of who's reached out to us, what's been done, what's happened. And we've had, as of today, at close of business, we had 85 people reach out to us so far. And that's over the last 3 weeks. And some of them don't have their certificates of inspection yet, so we had to refer them back to building, but a lot of them have. And this is also, a lot of these property owners had multiple properties, right? So this is not only just 85 properties, it's probably closer to 100 or and over. That more than 75% of the people that have reached out to us have had their fines waived in total. So I just want to make sure that the council does know that we do have people that, were in the circumstance where they did, due to contractor unavailability or whatever, like they just couldn't get it done within the grace period. And that's something we've acknowledged, and we understand that, and that's a good faith, because they continue to show us. They were trying to reach out to contractors, they were trying to schedule, sometimes they canceled. It runs the gamut as to what was actually going on. But even before this new next steps procedure that we're hoping to roll out and have applicable to people by extending the grace period, a lot of these people even did get the benefit of that waiver, right? Even now before it. So I can only anticipate there's going to be a lot more after this rollout. So I did just want to mention that there is a substantial amount that have actually had their fines waived in totality.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Devine?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it, and the different things that you've gone over. One of the reasons that Councilor Jenny Rivera and myself filed this order to begin with was because we've found mistakes that have been made, and through no fault of the owner of the property. I have somebody, and this one was, thank goodness, taken care of, but he was, and what I don't understand is he got his certificate of inspection after spending almost $8,000 on July 26th of 2024, and on October 1st, 2024, he got a letter saying that he was fined $8,600, and it was cleared up because it was wrong. The records were wrong, and that's what I think we're all concerned with. The records, there's something wrong with the records, and it shouldn't penalize the homeowner. In his letter, it says, as provided in the letter, capital L, fines have been accruing at the rate of 100/300 per day. It doesn't say specifically, is it 100 a day? Is it 300 a day? Is it 150 a day? Whatever. So I think that certainly needs to be corrected. Also, from what I can see, there's two situations. if you own a 3-unit property and above, reach out to the building department to start the certificate of inspection process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then 2, if you have a certificate of inspection, however you have been informed you owe fines related to the certificate of inspection process, reach out to the law department to discuss your fines. And that's what this person did, and it was discovered that the records were wrong. And I'm not blaming anybody, but that's what has to happen, is the records have got to be looked through, and I'm sure you have. But the other thing is, if this is a 5-year process, that every 5 years this law goes into effect, am I right on that? Is it a 5-year?
It's, the requirement is that the properties be inspected every 5 years.
Right.
It is the responsibility of the property owner
Right,
to file for that inspection
right,
on the 5th year before their certificate expires.
right.
It will be issued a certificate. It will have a clear-cut expiration date on it. They are responsible to make sure that they apply and go through the process of what they have to go through and get the inspection prior to the expiration date
Right.
of that certificate.
But what happens with the situation here, which somebody is getting extensions? Okay, if I can explain this. You start here, you've been fined, and you're getting extensions on that fine, and the time is going up for the 5 years. That what comes in 5 years, got to start it again? Or am I missing something?
Until the certificate is issued, that's the start of your 5 years,
Okay,
okay? When the certificate is issued. So this whole process is just to try and alleviate some of the fines with extensions
okay,
so that people aren't getting fined and are able to work toward compliance, getting their properties into compliance without being fined.
and
Okay.
the
Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. And the other thing I'm looking at, this person's certificate of inspection, it was issued, they inspected the building, everything was taken care of, even though there was a problem with the records and it was straightened out. I don't see any place here where it says, by the way, in 5 years, you've got to do this again. You just
There
said
should be
that.
an expiration date on the certificate. So probably
7/26/29.
Right.
So, but unfortunately, it doesn't say, I'm just, playing me. 7/26/29, does that mean I've got to go back and
Yes.
start all over? I know that means that, but not everybody would get that. Or maybe nobody would even see it because, oh my goodness, I got their certificate of inspection and this is great. So that's something I'm learning today, which is good as well. The other thing, I'm sorry.
May I
Yeah.
just respond to that? I'm more than happy to add an accompanying letter that will clarify the need to
I think that would be a good.
reapply
Yeah.
before the expiration
Yeah.
date.
And also people that are just starting the process, like this friend of mine, he didn't really get a letter. He just got this application thing. It didn't say like, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, enclosed, please find, this is what you have to do to get your house up to code." There was no letter with it, okay?
That was clearly an error.
I agree.
and before my time.
Yes, I
because
agree.
I just started.
Welcome.
2 weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks
Yeah.
ago, I just started. I
Yeah.
just came back to the city.
But that's, and I've told this to people, he didn't get a letter, okay, at all. He just got this like application thing. So, again, I appreciate what you're saying, and as far as revamping the grace periods and the extension. And you had mentioned before about a municipal hearing officer, and I'm pretty sure it's Counselor Tessa Murphy-Ramboletti that has filed that order to have that person in place. Again, I don't know if it went to ordinance, or is that where it went?
It's an ordinance.
So-
Yeah. There's going to need to be additional conversation. I know some counselors have had concerns about that.
Okay.
But I mean, we can talk about that at ordinance.
Okay.
There is definitely some very, very merited reasons why we must have it.
Yeah. And the chair of the ordinance, let me introduce you to Israel Rivera, so that's good. So that's good. So,
We need it.
so I'm sure he can take that up quickly. And the determination of the fines, whether it's up to 300. I know we've talked about this. And they're right now, there's a grace period going on. And one of the, when I first filed this with Jenny, one of the counselors asked about rescinding it or being held in escrow, the fines, and she thought we should just, completely rescind everything. And my feeling was, and I think Jenny's was too, don't rescind it in case those people are in violation. So there are people that may be in violation. It's the people that are not in violation. It's the people where the records may be messed up that we need to worry about.
And that is what I tried to address with all of these extensions in the way that I formatted them, to catch those kinds of mistakes. And again, if you have had an address problem, a name problem, a mail problem, and that can be shown through our records, through your evidence, through your records, that is something that absolutely is taken into consideration.
So I would certainly urge anyone in the audience, and I'm going to be making a motion later to see if anybody would like to speak for maybe 2 minutes if they've got concerns or questions while we have everybody here. But anybody who is listening in the audience, definitely take this serious. If you think you have complied with everything, like it says, go to the building department. If you have your certificate, go to the law department. I think that will straighten out a lot of things, hopefully. So I do appreciate, especially you being here only a couple weeks. So God bless you.
I love Holyoke. I really do.
We all do. Yeah.
If I may, through the chair, just briefly, I just wanted to say that, yes, there will be times when a record may not be updated accurately and a notice may have went out or correspondence may have went out that shouldn't have went out. But I guess my plea to the council and the members of the public is to acknowledge that we are human beings. And this is a city that is very busy in its government, and we have a lot going on in all departments across the board, and we do what we can to the extent that we can during the time that we have. So that's again my plea for grace. We are human, we are trying to work with you, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Appreciate that.
Madam Chair. And I appreciate that, Jane, believe me, but understand I always take full responsibility on everything. If there's something that didn't go right, I think there was certainly concerns raised about process, as Councilor Devine pointed out, with errors and mistakes and whatnot like that. We own that, regardless of those errors and mistakes. However, it doesn't lose sight of what the responsibilities of the law. But when those issues do happen, we come together, we convene, and we try to come up with ways to right the ship, while also not losing sight of what we're trying to achieve in this community, as far as these codes are concerned.
Okay. I just had one more quick thing, and I had sent this to Attorney Mantaleski about the ordinance that said fines up to $300. And this was sent by somebody who works in engineering, Marie?
She's in building.
Building, okay.
Yeah.
Talking about the building department fining 3 families 100 and 4 and above 300. And I had sent that to you, and we were supposed to, talk about it tonight or.
About the.
It says an ordinance claiming fines were $100 per day, not $300.
Yeah, I didn't find any ordinance that said that.
Okay.
I found only the one ordinance that said up to 300. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Anything else about that? That might, and I think that there might have been confusion. Maybe my best guess, right? I'm just speculating. That she was thinking of the 100 for the 3 families versus the 300 for the 4 and up. So again, I'm just speculating. I don't know.
Yeah, she
that's
did.
all I could find. That doesn't mean again, I'm human. I could have potentially missed it, but I don't think I did. But
Yeah,
that's the one that And I did include that in the presentation too.
Okay.
That reference.
Yeah, this was 18-31B
Right.
in 2012, so,
Yep, that's the one. Yep, that I
Okay.
included in the presentation, and that says the up to the 300.
okay, all right, thank you.
Madam
Oh,
Chair. Just to clarify, there are a couple of administrative people in our office who are not building officials, and I take full responsibility for the department and for what my inspectors are doing, and I just got here. So what I'm trying to do is assess the situation. I have done some assessments in the department, and with the process of how all of this rolled out in my absence, and have looked at the processes of and how some of these mistakes could possibly have been made. Please, if I just want to say to council and to the public, if there are concerns or questions or issues, please reach out to a building inspector. Our clerks, they're very hardworking, but they're not building officials. So please don't hold them responsible for mistakes that have been made that they just don't. They're not building officials. Okay. So. They work very hard, and they deserve a lot because they're taking the brunt of some of the emotion that has surrounded this process and the mistakes that have made here. So I just want to plead for grace for them and for our department, and hope that some of these bad feelings can be alleviated.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you. Councilor Givner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks so much for coming in and explaining this all to us. There's a lot of concerned property owners, residents, Holyoakers, and I think it's really important that this information is shared. Your slideshow was very helpful. I would just ask, so the original letters, it looks like had a grace period of 7 days. Is that true? It said within 7 days to come into compliance on like the original letters that went out.
So the original letters I'm guessing here, but based on letters that I've sent out from this building department in the past when I was here before, the 7 days was to reach out to the building department and communicate your plan for compliance. Okay, so that's what the 7 days, that's my understanding of the 7 days. And
then
I may
Yeah, I
have
did too.
one of the letters here.
We have some in the presentation.
Okay. And then, as we talk about grace periods and coming up coming up as a group about like with the law department, the building department, and the mayor's office, coming up with what grace periods should look like, what kind of leniency should be given to people who've done this thing or that thing, or received a notice or not received a notice, or have replied or not replied. How was any of that communicated to the public?
How are we going to?
This is the first time it's being communicated to?
It is the first time.
Okay.
I have, over the last couple of days, rolled out some of these grace periods already.
Okay.
However, it will be going up on our department page on the website. It will also be going on our Facebook. I guess we have a Facebook page. I don't know anything about it, but apparently we've got a Facebook page that is just for announcements only.
Yeah.
We will also do a press release
Okay.
according to Mr. Mayor. So,
Yeah, I just think it's really important
Absolutely.
because obviously a lot of people have missed a lot of information, and how we get it out to people is changing rapidly. We don't have a newspaper. Nobody watches the same news. Not everybody's on Facebook. I mean, how we communicate is really difficult. So I'm just curious about how this information is going to be communicated, because it does affect real people's lives.
Absolutely.
And, having fines that you're confused about, nervous about, frustrated about, super stressed out about is not okay, especially if there is a path to dealing with them. So I think the sooner we communicate to people the information that's being shared in this room, which, okay, there's some people here. It may be a big crowd for public safety, but Holyoke has 38,000 people, and this is not the majority of Holyoke. So
I think we might explore also mailing it out to folks. So figure out what we can do.
yeah,
with that.
I think
But
it's
just
really
send a
important.
a follow-up notice.
Because I tend to think I'm in the loop, and a lot of this caught me by surprise as a property owner in Holyoke,
No, absolutely.
and thinking I have an in.
Just to clarify, this extension process that I've come up with has been a work in progress over the last 2 days.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay. Good to know.
this is not something
Yeah.
that I've been sitting on. I've been trying to look at all of the problems,
No, that's
all
great.
of the problems, and all of the mistakes, and all of the concerns, and come up with a comprehensive plan. And it's been almost a moving target. As
I'm
I've
sure.
heard more things. So I haven't been sitting on this, and I apologize for just our volume of calls and emails in the office that we haven't been able to even communicate this. I think yesterday was the first day that I actually gave one of these extensions.
Okay.
I gave a couple today, I think. So, and I know that Inspector Sullivan in my office,
Not counselor.
not Counselor Sullivan, Inspector Sullivan in my office is kind of the bottleneck for our phone calls and emails, and he's just one person.
Right.
So he can only do as much as he can do and answer as many calls as he can possibly answer in one day. And, I don't want him being burned out. I'm trying to help, get the process in place so that we can implement it and get it out to the folks. And yes, we will definitely do a mailing in addition to the Facebook, the website, and
Press release.
press release.
Thanks. I think we all know and feel that safety is important. Tenants live in buildings, renters, residents, we all live somewhere. I am an owner-occupied, building owner, landlord.
Yes.
Communication is key.
I agree.
So I think that the biggest thing with all of this is communicating information to property owners, building owners, residents of the city, because I have had conversations about this in January with people in this building, and was mentioning that I thought the process was unclear. And now, 10 months later, the process is so unclear that we're where we are now. So I think as we create a process, it's important to help everyone understand what it is, make it very clear, have updated systems, processes. Systems only work if we use them. And I know there's been a lot of turnover, and I know, we all can do what we can do as individual human beings. But at the end of the day, we are dealing with the lives of an entire city and the people within it. So I think it's fine for us to, want to give ourselves a little grace, but at the same time, we have to consider this incredibly urgent for the people who are stressed out, worried, concerned, doing all the things they need to do to come into compliance, which this is clearly helping make that happen, which I think is a really good thing in Holyoke. But I think we have to make sure we're really clear with the public and have systems in place that are just as easy to find as someone's Facebook page. I should be able to go somewhere and look up what I need to do. If my 5-year certificate of occupancy or inspection is expiring, what are my next steps? Where's the checklist? What do I do now? So I just think the easier it is for people to understand, the more likely everybody can be in compliance without having to inundate your department with phone calls, which you don't need. So thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Counselor Sullivan?
Okay, thank you. Can you tell me exactly how many notices are sent out?
There were several rounds of notices that that were sent out, to my knowledge, before I got here. So, exactly which round of notices are we talking about?
Well, in total, how many property owners are affected?
674. It was close to that number.
It is close to that number. There was, and that's for properties, not just property owners, because there are people, property owners that have several properties, right? So I'm just checking out here, and I can tell you it's about, between 600 and 700 went out.
Okay, do these go by registered or certified mail, or they just,
Yes, not registered, certified mail return receipt requested,
Along with regular mail.
and regular mail.
you lost me on that.
I'm sorry?
They all 670 went by certified?
Certified mail return receipt requested, and also via regular mail.
That's wrong. It was not certified.
Excuse me.
Okay, so,
Yeah, no, wait.
I don't-
Wait. Tom,
Will be allowed to speak after.
give me a second.
so if I understand this, then we have a signed receipt on all 670 of these?
A majority of them, yes. There are some that got returned to sender, but then we do have record of people receiving actual notice because they do respond to the regular mailing, even if their return receipt came back unclaimed. So there's two types, right? There's when you're return, and I had to learn this through law practice because I didn't know. There are two types. So when you get your return receipt, your green card, right, that comes back, sometimes the whole letter will come back and it'll say not deliverable, unknown, right? So if that means like there was a name error or there was no mailbox like that had names on it, they don't really know. Sometimes they'll have it come back unclaimed. The postmaster will have tried 3 times usually to deliver a certified mailing, and they'll come back unclaimed, meaning not that there wasn't someone there to get them, just that someone refused either to sign or ignored it. So there are 2 types. So we do have a lot of green cards, return receipts, and then we do have some that came back. And then there are, of those people that have come back, some people did actually respond to them. So we know that they did have the actual notice via the regular mail. And then some people did not respond. And of course, we're willing to work with those people if they didn't receive the notice, right? So that's why it's very fluid, and everybody might have a different circumstance.
Yep.
So I want that to be known that, even if you didn't think it came certified mail, there might have been an attempt, but it just got returned. And again, if that's the case and there was actually no notice, then of course we're going to work with you.
Okay, so my next question would be, by the state statute and the ordinance and stuff, it says up to $300. But even right now with the $100 figure and the reduction, all very nice, but it seems very arbitrary. Just doing the quick math on it, at $100, that's $36,500 a year. So somewhere along, and never mind.
Right.
At 300,
Right.
at
Right.
$300, we're talking
Absolutely.
about $9,000.
That's why it's important to open your mail, respond, do this, because under the letter of the law, under both our ordinances and I believe it's state law, you can do the up to 300.
I get that, but what says it shouldn't be $10 a day? Where is the low end of it's very arbitrary right now as to what it can be, and
That's right. I can.
all right?
Okay.
And my last point on that is even with these high numbers, even at reducing it to only 20%, can still be enough to just wipe out some of these property owners, right? That could still be a 6-figure number.
It could, and I think that is why, under the new procedures, the building department is going to be extending out the grace period, because what the law department's been using the grace period as kind of our catalyst, right? So if you got your certificate of inspection within that 3 months after your grace period ended, we're waiving them. If it's after that, it's the 20%. But by extension, right, the building department, by extending those grace periods, you're de facto extending out the waivability in total of the fines.
All right, but as far as the grace period goes, right, some of these are just waiving the first year or the first 2 years, right, which is, some of this happened during COVID. There's a lot of other things that went on also. How many, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about a period here of,
Well, the fines they're not starting from 2018. It's starting from 2023, 2024 rounds.
okay.
So anything that happened prior to 1/1/2023 is not applicable. So yeah, some people did get those notices back in 2018, 2017, and even under the new the new procedure that we want to put in place, those people are still going to get additional grace period, right? But with respect to the fines have not been accruing since 2018. We're not talking like even at 100, right? We're not talking about $36,000 a year. And so by extending that 2023 or 2024 grace period, that will, again, fit you into, hopefully, the total waiver group. And not every community is going to be willing to give that much of an additional grace period, because we are talking about life safety, right? So I think that is incredibly generous. And I think that shows a very good faith effort on a part of a city to work with these property owners.
Okay, that was my questions.
Mayor Garcia, you want to respond to?
No, I think she clarified it pretty well.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. But I did want to say that not too long ago, we had a bunch of residents, a lot of residents actually, and upwards to north of maybe 50 people that were in here in this council chambers at a public safety committee meeting, pleading with the city about conditions of their households. And, here is this path. The unfortunate part about this path, and I level with everybody, is the fact that 3 families is included and held to the same standard as larger, higher density building owners. One particular property owner at that meeting was even quoted in the paper saying the city has never enforced the laws on on building owners. It's quoted right in the paper. And so here we have that path. The unfortunate part, and it turns my stomach, believe me, I don't sit high and mighty in an office. I deal with the grunt of all this all the time. 3 families are included, and I did have conversations with our legislature saying, hey, is there any way that, it's not anything we can solve overnight, obviously. This is the Commonwealth laws, code enforcement laws. How do we amend it to not include, or maybe, introduce something different into the law when it comes to 3-unit family owners, 4-unit, even 4-unit family owners compared to buildings, right, 30, 15, 20 plus units. And so that's where we are. Here we are, right, following a path, and now we're hearing property owners. So it's almost like, what direction we go to try to right the ship, you can't win. Nevertheless, I ran, you've guys heard me over and over, we ran a management campaign. I've talked about inconsistent enforcement in the city largely because of, we had an internal system that just wasn't adequate. And those are many reasons why that might exist. Debate that another day. And so the intent here, no matter the issue, whether if it's a license holder at a building establishment, liquor licenses, we've had our run-ins with business owners frustrated with us finally following the rules, or other code enforcement issues that are going on. And the goal here is we're still going to, there's still sight of what we need to do, be flexible where we can, where we're able, obviously we're not in the business here of screwing with people, but also making sure that like we're doing our oath, right, while also making sure that like we're within the confinements of what we're able to do and staying the course of trying to right size the ship of the city. So yeah, it's not fun inside or outside, external, internal, whether you're an employee or you're the public, and certainly there's growing pains in that process. But obviously, like, the city is committed to as this city has and this council has proven from time to time again on every issue that's came forward, we're always willing to work together and figure things out and try to make things better. But what we're not willing to do is ignore the loss.
Councilor Bartley?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to have to leave pretty soon, so I'll just kind of be really quick, okay? Patty pointed out the municipal hearing officer. We did take that up once in ordinance, and it's under review. And I was a little bit critical of it myself, Madam Chair, because there was really no justification behind the draft ordinance we received. So we rejected it, and we sent it back to the law department. So Izzy did take it up in a timely fashion, and now the law department needs to get its act together, and in my opinion, and get better explanation to us in ordinance, so we can go from there. Second off, I'm all for supporting the law. I will point out to you that 110.7 in the CMR says a lack of a current COI may be enforced, according to 780 CMR 114.3. So I don't want to hear this stuff about fines, Madam Chair, are going to be implemented because. Now, it is true the building commissioner has flexibility, but when we see the word may, it's not the word shall, and all of us have been here around this little circle long enough to know that's a massive, massive difference. So, and CMRs have higher priority in the ranking than city ordinances. So I don't want to hear it about city ordinances superimposed. That's a different argument than what's happening here. So, U.S. Constitution, federal government, state constitution, mass general laws, code of mass regulations, then down to city ordinances. That's the pecking order in the federal system. That's what we do. So I don't buy this stuff about fines are mandatory or mandated, because it's not true. There is flexibility in the CMR. So I'm just going to keep going.
Excuse me, David, CMR, are you saying? So people will know.
Code of mass, Code of mass regulations.
Okay,
Code of
thank
mass
you.
regulations.
We agree with that.
Code of mass regulations. Okay, I'm going to say just a couple of other incredibly brief things, and I do have to go, Madam Chair. I appreciate your graciousness. The proposal we have before us is just that, by the building commissioner, whom I have tremendous respect for. I'm glad she's back on board. It does say proposed. The problem I have with this is that it's in a vacuum. We came up with it upstairs, over across the street in the annex. Where was the rest of the input, either from the building owners or from the tenants? I refer you, Madam Chair, to the orders that I filed relative to their ordinance. And so last night we had a wonderful 3-hour, unbelievably painful ordinance meeting. We got through all the traffic stuff, and then we'll move on from there. But my opinion is you shouldn't just do this stuff when it's this serious in a vacuum. That's my opinion. I would also say that two other quick things, and I'm going to go. I think those of us who checked our email today know that this order before you right now is vetoed. Now, that was not mentioned on the microphone by the chair or any member of the committee. I don't know if you saw the email or not. You may not have. So the mayor issued a veto of Councilor Devine's and Councilor Rivera's order. So that's sitting in your email box right now. I'm not going to read it. It doesn't matter. So whatever we're discussing now it's perfectly legitimate, just so you know, to take up this order, because we haven't had a chance to have just because it was vetoed before this meeting, it doesn't mean this is procedurally out of order, Madam Chair. So just so you realize that. But the order, in fact, was vetoed. Why that wasn't raised up? Because I think it came in later today. So the public should be aware of that. Last point, and I promise you, because I'm a quacker, what we heard, and this is, now I know how this started. I was at the meeting, Madam Chair, where there were tenants that came up to the mic. Again, we heard a prior speaker say, this group does not reflect the whole city. Well, we know that. In my opinion, those group of tenants did not reflect all the tenants in the city of Holyoke. Many of them, I'm going to say the majority, though I didn't count, were neighbor to neighbor, which incredibly intense advocates for their certain positions, with the shirts on, and they came in here. Same group that went ahead and raided the Holyoke Gas and Electric, if you recall, 4 years ago. Exact same group that came in where employees had a locked door. That was a group that was here.
I've actually been raided before, just so you know, it's not the same.
No, Izzy, listen, I respect you, but I didn't interrupt you, my friend. I didn't interrupt your speech. I didn't interrupt your speech, and I could have done that 15 times. It's okay, so I respect you, but I'll stop.
See what he does.
You done?
Okay, let's.
Here we go.
Through the chair.
Okay. Listen, I'll go toe-to-toe with you anytime, my friend. Believe me.
Through the chair.
Hold on. I have the floor.
Said you were done.
Guys,
No, I
can
asked
you let
if he was
Councilor
done.
Bartley speak, please, everybody? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilor.
Okay, so this whole thing, I don't even, and I heard the word say that Mr. Lagimonier made the decision. I would actually like to see that in a writing somewhere. I find that almost impossible to believe that the Kevin Lagimonier that I know made that decision on his own with the fines. I strongly doubt that with every fiber of my being. The Kevin Lagimonier I know, that's not his game to hurt people, which is what this is about. Now, I agree, and I think we all agree, that we want to have safe housing for everybody. That is absolutely the bottom line. The rollout of this didn't work. This is a massive improvement to what was rolled out. I think a lot more work needs to be done, Madam Chair, and I think it needs to be done not in the aforesaid vacuum. I think you need to invite some other people to the table. This is just a proposal. I would ask the building commissioner to accept some feedback on this, and we'll go from there. End of speech. Thank you.
Through the chair, Councilor Bartley, I would like to just respond to you briefly. So, what?
Recognize her.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera. So, I just want to specifically address you. One, you said that you know how this got started, obviously, because tenants came in. No, this started back in 2017, 2018. So I want to specifically say that is not the reason that this happened. Two, you said that the building code says that you can issue fines. Okay, let's say, may, right? We all know you're an attorney, I'm an attorney. We know the difference between may and shall, right? So as you specifically stated, as I specifically stated.
That's what I'm trying to read now.
You said that we may issue fines. A lot of people that received these notices back 2018, even 2023, beginning of 2024, were non-responsive until the letter went out saying this is how much you owed. So fines do get people in for the conversation. 3, the building code specifically stated that no building that is required to have a certificate of inspection that does not shall be occupied without a certificate of inspection. So is that what you want? Do you want the city to try to make sure that all of these people have to get out of their homes because they can't be occupied under a building code that says shall not be occupied? You do not.
I don't know if you want to recognize me or not. If you don't, that's okay.
Councilor Bartley?
Yeah, right. I'm not really sure where you're headed with that, but I think my last statement, if you replay the tape, was everybody wants safe housing. And I also said this was a great start as opposed to what you did prior. So, and I would just say, I mean, you want to accuse me. I mean, you guys started the process. I think you did a lousy job, but now hopefully it's going to get a little bit better with a little bit of input for some other people. So, but whether or not you want to, the mayor himself said it described how it started. So that was the impetus, in my opinion, from the mayor's own words. So fine, listen to neighbor all you want, but this is the result you get when you just do stuff without considering other people's voices. You've done this, and I think you made an error. You don't want to own up to it. That's okay, but let's figure it out.
Mayor Garcia?
I think that, elected politics breeds this, folks. I get it. I didn't run for mayor to play politics. I ran to manage a city. And sometimes we got to make unpopular decisions. I get it. At the same time here, we've known Councilor Bartley for a very long time. He gets very passionate. The system that was put out there, mind you, these letters that went out, the press releases that people did respond. People have responded. A lot of folks did meet with the building department, got their certificate, or in the process have gotten a bunch of fees waived. In fact, actually, a large majority of people in this whole process is I think the biggest concern that we all share for everybody is just the shock, right? You get the letter in the mail and you're reading this, and it's just the stress that it brings and whatnot. And I can't argue against that at all. That's part of what we're trying to figure out and build consensus on and see how we can be better. It doesn't take away from the fact that the responsibility is there. Communicate with the city. City works with you through what you need to get done, so that folks the people that actually got penalized, if I'm not mistaken, people that actually confirmed penalty and came in and made payments, we're talking about a handful of people, about five people.
Five people.
Everyone else is pending. And so there's opportunity there to still figure things out. I level, and I can't take away the fact of the scare and stress that the letter brought when a tenant gets a 14-day notice in the mail. Even though we all know you don't have to vacate the premise in 14 days. You get a 30-day summary judgment, and you go to court, and you do a court agreement. That 14-day notice is not a cute letter that says, hey, you might, you know what I mean? Like, it's the process. Now, we evaluate, we need to own up to where we can be better, and we'll do that. We can grandstand and get cute in our arguments just to get, the claps, and I appreciate folks, and I know people are, at the same time, like, let's not, we're trying to clarify what happened. We didn't, some folks, I think every person is circumstantial, and some people might not even like the answers that they're going to get because it doesn't directly, or whatever the circumstance might be. I'm trying to avoid, or we're all trying to avoid, the little person that lives in their household, that's living paycheck to paycheck. I think there's a system that's been outlined here that we're going to try our damnedest to make sure it's out there, to be sure people know and understand. And there's a process of elimination that's happening here since the very start of those first letters. You had our first wave. It's almost like, we're dealing with in waves. Here we are now. I know in my press release, and I was very transparent and open on the media before, those unpaid fees, if we don't respond, they're going to get leaned. And that's, and the number that they saw in the paper, that's when we got an influx of people finally come out. And that's what we're trying to do, is get people to come out so we can right-size the ship and get things right here. It's not fun using scare tactics in any enforcement. We've gone through it all. I've been through this before plenty of times. It's not the greatest thing, but at the same time, like in Holyoke, the quality of life challenges we see on our streets is a symptom of a bigger problem, and it's been an internal problem of not doing, not of anything, of nothing. We haven't been really enforcing anything. To even, I mean, traffic concerns that we hear on the street, whether if it's policing issues or Board of Health issues, building department issues, fire code issues. We have license holders in town that were operating with no liquor license approved. Still waiting for a certificate of inspection. They said, the city's not going to do nothing. I spoke with a particular building owner who thought we weren't serious. And, here we are now and try to, communicate these issues and we stood our ground. We're very serious about trying to get things right in this city overall. And I'll take the beatings, I'll take the punches, and that's what I'm here for. I take full responsibility. You can always count on me to collaborate with the council and the public to try to do things better. I think the reason why it's in proposal format right now is because we do want to hear some feedback on this. And if there's some ideas that come out tonight we didn't think of, even better, because we want to be better, right? That's absolutely no question. But, this grandstanding and whatnot, like, that's fine. We can do that, play that game all day. Just know that between the lines here, this is the direction we're going. And, I'm hoping that, the greater public understands what we're trying to do and continues to support.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia.
Madam Chair, just a brief comment. Councilor Bartley said that these extensions were developed in a vacuum, which is just not true. That means that there was no information that went behind these. The information that went behind these proposals was the feedback and the mistakes and all of the feedback from the public, the law department, my staff, the counselors, the mayor, everyone. These were developed as a result of all of that feedback. These points that were brought up that I have written down are also being taken into consideration. However, these extensions, they're not a proposal. These are the extensions, okay? And it is the purview of the building official to enforce these, and that is what I plan to do. This is not something that I can't reinvent the wheel and go back in time and make all those letters go away. But what I can do is try and smooth out the damage and go from where we are. This is where we are, okay? And that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make it clear. I'm trying to alleviate the damage and help some of these fines get waived for the people that really deserve to have them waived. And I think I did a really good job at formatting this. That's all I have. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Commissioner Ward. I would like to recognize Councilor Vakins also online, and give it now to Councilor Murphy Ramboletti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to, I've been on the call and just listening and heard everyone's concerns at the last meeting. I've been contacted by a lot of different folks who are being impacted by this. And I do appreciate, I wanted to first recognize that I do appreciate the position that the mayor is taking. As someone who has rented for years, I've lived in multifamily homes, I've lived in apartment buildings where things definitely weren't up to code, and I did wonder, if something happens, how do I know how to get out of this house, this building on the 4th floor, and what should I do? So I appreciate that we do need to make sure that our buildings are safe. I also acknowledge and I appreciate that the mayor is here tonight and taking responsibility for perhaps some of the shortcomings in the way that this is implemented. What I haven't really felt like I've heard tonight is kind of the second part of Councilor Devine and Rivera's order about the folks that have already paid a significant amount of money in order to come into compliance. I know that I've heard from several individuals who really kind of, scrape together significant amounts of money for the average person. $9,000 is a lot to have to put together in order to come into compliance. And so I'm just wondering if there's any kind of recourse available or to be potentially considered for the folks who did pay very quickly and perhaps they were notified like this year and now there's these extensions. Is there any sort of ability to, I believe the order suggested putting things into escrow or refunding certain fines? Well, I'm not saying that it necessarily makes sense to refund fines. I just wonder if there's any ability for the city to offer those individuals some kind of incentive for getting that money together in order to come into compliance. So that's my question, and I really appreciate all the work that is being done, and I appreciate all the people that are there tonight. I'm sure this is a stressful situation, so I'm glad that we are working on this together. But yeah, if you could talk about any kind of thoughts on the folks who have put together the fines.
Thank you. Attorney Jane?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti. So I just wanted to address that. So as Commissioner Ward stated and the mayor stated, I believe we've had 5 or maybe even less, I'm not sure, but 5, at least around 5 people pay. And I do definitely know the people you're talking about with respect to the 9,000. Those people would not have qualified for the extension. We did look into all of this. They definitely got notice in 2018. So they wouldn't have qualified anyway. So they would have still had the 20%. Another one that I know of that was significant was in the $12,200 mark. That was the 20% of their fine. And that was one that was more recently paid. And they'd had notice since 2017. They got another notice in 2018, several fines and violations later, 2019, 2020, and were non-responsive when these went out in 2023, 2024. There was several communication follow-ups from the building department saying, hey, what's going on? Like, let's try to get this done. And they were completely non-responsive. And so I dealt with their real estate agent. And after I provided them with all of that information, they've quickly paid the fine. So I just want everybody to know that it's the fines that have been paid are the people in that situation that would not have qualified for any sort of extension of a grace period under the building commissioner's guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gibner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I appreciate all this information. I really do. I just am curious about the specific certificate of occupancy. How long has that been required by the city?
So it's a certificate of inspection.
Inspection, sorry.
That's okay. I mean, these details are unfortunately incredibly important when it comes to the building code. How long have they been required? I believe that they've been required since the mid-'80s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's been many, many, many years.
Okay, and the first time people are getting letters about them was in 2017, 2018 from
Correct.
the city?
We have not had staff in the city, in the building department, or infrastructure. We didn't have We didn't hit this. I mean, it's just so labor intensive to do this for so many property owners. And you know, for the record, I don't necessarily agree that the state did this very fairly. I agree with the mayor about the three family. That's pretty that's pretty tough.
But since the 80s, it's been three families since the 80s. Three families and higher.
Yes,
Okay.
to my knowledge, it's something that's been in Table 110 for as long as I've been an inspector and before that. So it's not new. It's not a new code.
I guess I'm just wondering, in other cities, how did property owners find out about it? Because unfortunately, like the mayor mentioned, things have not been enforced here, and I think that's where the surprise or the concern or the frustration comes from. I mean, I have owned my house since 2003, and
Microphone.
Your microphone went.
What is up with these microphones?
It's a ploy.
Mine is.
Mine is.
Test.
Jiggle the wiring back.
Hello? Okay. So I guess I really appreciate all the work that's being done because there's nothing I enjoy more than clarity and understanding of process. But to know that these laws have been on the books since the 80s and now we're trying to enforce them, I think it's really important. We need to enforce our laws. We absolutely do on all fronts. And I definitely feel, emotional about these things, but I try not to because I just don't think it's helpful. I did want to point out that when Neighbor to Neighbor came in here, they weren't talking about certificates of inspections. They were talking about uninhabitable living spaces where there were rats, where they had problems with rodents, mold, plumbing issues, heating issues. I mean, so I think this is a totally different animal. And I hope that what we're doing here with this certificate of inspection that seems to only be about emergency exits in buildings, I'm hoping that whatever process we put in place will also start to cover these other things because, yes, it is important to be able to safely get out of a home in case of a fire. And I'm happy to say that, no one at my house is worried about rats, rodents, mold, ceilings falling, I don't know, whatever kind of other craziness is happening in other buildings that's totally inappropriate and unexcusable. But I think that I'm sure that if we're tackling this, we'll start to tackle other things. And I just can't emphasize enough how important it is to have processes that everyone can follow, because I bought my house when I was 23 years old. I never got a letter about anything. All of a sudden, 20 years later, I get a letter with a fine, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? But I appreciate that we as a city are taking on a lot, and I appreciate your department. I appreciate the law department. I definitely appreciate Mayor Garcia, because I feel like if it wasn't for this happening now, this would be going on forever and not being noticed. And I think this stuff is really important. So how we're dealing with it, I think, is important. The fact that only 5 people have had to pay fines so far, I think, is also something that's incredibly notable, considering that 675-ish letters have gone out. Whatever we do, I hope across the board we implement it, because if people don't know what they need to do, they won't do it. And without having some kind of fine system in place, unfortunately, if you don't attack people's pocketbooks, a lot of times they won't comply. I think in this case currently, I'm happy that there's a system in place to waive a lot of them, because I think people are just caught off guard. And with the neighbor to neighbor issues that are also very valid, I hope we start tackling those, because fire exits are important for sure, but having uninhabitable living spaces is bananas. So thanks.
Yeah, no, Counselor, you're right. This is a different animal. I think my point about just bringing that up along with other enforcement issues was just kind of making the general broad point that these are quality of life challenges that exist. The city has mechanisms in place to enforce these in Corley that are directly responsible for impacting the quality of life or overcoming the quality of life challenges and disparities we see in our community. So if we're talking about the Flex Squad initiatives, basic code enforcement from street view, graffiti, vegetation overgrowth, right? Trash and overflowing dumpsters, you've heard a lot about that. Or health-related issues that neighbors raise, and concerns that are coming up in this process. And I do think that coupled with staff capacity, I think a large piece of why these things weren't ever enforced is because, and these are reasons why we're advocating for strengthening internal controls and bringing in a CAFO, and the city is run by elected politics. You wouldn't elect your dentist, right? But we, or maybe, right? You want to vote for your dentist and who's never had, and besides just knowing Mass General law, municipal finance, budgeting, the biggest part of the job is navigating personalities, perspectives, differences, and enforcing the rules. The code is our mutual covenant in this community. As long as we live here, we agree that we're going to abide by these rules, and the city is looked upon to enforce them accordingly. We've inconsistently enforced. We've enforced where convenient for many years, and we can go on, many years of examples of who and where and what neighborhood or who didn't know who or what, where rules got enforced and who didn't. And my expectation for departments, because I'm not the expert, I don't know anything about building code and legalese or any of this, but my expectation is do the job, the obligation of which you are hired to do, nothing more, nothing less, within the confinements of Mass General law, and our local ordinances. Don't do anything illegal. Right, those are the red flags in the accountability office, the mayor's office. Don't do anything illegal, and be consistent. And that consistent part is so critical, because the other point I want to make is this word precedent. And 20% was came up with for those that the 5 that you heard about and whatever the case might be. The minute we start saying, okay, for you, instead of the 20%, just give me 5%, right? Now we're setting just don't give me nothing, right? Now we're setting a precedent, and when we get to a point where we get challenged in court, those things get looked at. Why are you doing this to this person and not this person? I mean, it even happens when we deal with union issues and arbitration. A lot of times the city would lose a case because they found precedent with something that the city didn't enforce with this person 2 years ago, right? And so consistency is critical to avoid precedent, and trying to navigate liability, protect resources, reduce harm. Those are the key buzz things that we're trying to do as municipal managers. Now, since the 80s, I strongly believe these things weren't, because it's not fun. This is not fun stuff to do as a mayor. A little bit of public pressure changes the whole course. I don't really fall into public pressure unless we're doing something illegal, absolutely. But if I know that we're within the confinements of the law and on track with what we campaigned on, which was management and right-sizing our ship, I can put my head down at night. And that's what we're doing. While at the same time, walking a fine line, things can always be better. I know that nothing's never perfect. where we're constantly looking at and trying to evaluate and understand how can we do things better. Again, what the proposals in front of you, like this thought about not getting input is just not. I watch the meetings. I get tagged on yes, members of the public. I do read things you tag me on social media, even though I don't use it to respond. But I watch and I listen and I acknowledge the work and listening to the comments. I'm hoping to get back today, or we're hoping to get back today. We'll take all that and continue to fine tune it, while also staying the course on what our obligations are as a municipality as we try to clean things up.
Do you still need to respond, Commissioner Ward, to?
I would.
Okay.
I would like to. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. One thing that I wanted to mention with the neighbor-to-neighbor situation, where there were complaints of rats and quality of life problems with our housing, which is a huge problem in this city. One of the functions of the certificate of inspection process is to catch that with eyes, inspector eyes, okay? When we go into these buildings, we're not just looking for the checklist of items that we need to look for, the emergency lights, the exit signs, all of that, okay? We're also looking for poor housing conditions. I mean, although we're not going into housing units, we do go into the common areas, and we can see a lot from those common areas. If a building is not maintained, the common areas are not going to be maintained. And that is why one of the reasons why the certificate of inspection, the inspection itself, is so important. We catch unpermitted work, and when there's a lot of unpermitted work, it's a symptom of, it's possible that there's a lot of problems within that building. So I also have, it's close to my heart because I started in this city as a CDBG grant-funded inspector on High Street with a ticket book in my hand, okay, walking up and down. And I've worked very closely with the Board of Health inspectors and have done comprehensive inspections with them and the fire department up and down, sometimes 60 housing units in a day to try and alleviate some of these problems. And the certificate of inspection process is a tool that we can use to try and catch some of these very bad buildings that need a lot of help. When we can catch some of these problems, chances are the rest of the building is going to get taken care of as well. And so it's a symptom of a bigger problem when exit signs and fire escapes are in bad shape. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilor Sullivan?
Okay, so I would just like to take a moment also to address the affected property owners. Myself, I like what I've heard here tonight, and I'm just urging some patience and some understanding as you work with the building department and the legal department and our mayor through mistaken identity. I've received quite a few phone calls, and some of them were quite laced with profanity and insulting, and people standing in front of my house taking pictures. And I hope the poor other Mike Sullivan in the office of the building inspector isn't getting the same treatment, nor the employees of the city. I hope things can calm down a little bit and everybody patiently work through this process. Certainly, I'm open to hearing as you work through this process if you still have issues that you feel are not being addressed fairly. By all means, come to me or your ward counselor or whoever else, but please treat the city employees that are trying to enforce the codes and bring things back into compliance with respect and patience. So.
Thank you, Counselor Sullivan.
Very much.
Thank you.
Just moving to the mic. Madam Chairman, is it all right if I speak? Okay. Again, I can't echo enough what Counselor Sullivan just said, and I'm sorry he got that flack with having the name like Mike Sullivan. But the other thing I wanted to address, because this was the first I heard of it, was Counselor Bartley talking about the mayor's veto. And I read it, and I understand it, so I'm wondering if I can put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Since your mic works, if you could read the veto, and then that way the public won't be left with this, my God, there's a veto.
And the intent behind the veto wasn't at all like, this is
Compared to your
awful.
other ones.
All vetoes are normally, there's
Right.
some technical reasoning behind it, and this one had to do with just the confinements of the
It
law.
was a good veto, and I
and where
wanted
the
to read
power
it.
stands, but which is with the commissioner, I believe. Let me just pull it up, or do you have it there handy?
I can speak
You got
to
it
it.
for you?
Yeah, I don't mind.
No, do you have
I
the
have
veto
it,
to read
but
it?
it's so tiny.
It's right there.
Here.
You have it up?
Yeah.
Oh, thank
It's just tiny.
Patty. Sorry. So yes, so it says vote of October 16th, 2024, agenda item number 54, which was, it's the agenda item regarding Councilor Devine and Councilor Rivera's order regarding this matter. It says, in accordance with section 24 of the city charter, I hereby veto the attached order and return the same to the city council with my objections. I am vetoing this order as there was ambiguity as to what the city council was voting on, and therefore request that the vote be taken again to clarify. Item 54 was initially motioned by Councilor Devine to send to the mayor with a copy to public safety. The motion was then amended by Councilor Jordan to send to the mayor with a copy to public safety. Thereafter, about 20 minutes of debate ensued. At the end of the debate, Councilor President Murphy Ramboletti said that the motion on the floor was to receive, send to the mayor, and a copy to public safety. Obviously, there was a potential for confusion, and I want to make sure the council was fully aware of what they were voting on. In addition, I will be appearing at Public Safety tonight to outline what the city is doing with respect to the building fines as they relate to certificates of inspection under the building code. This should clarify that a moratorium is not needed. Therefore, considering the above, I am vetoing the order from October 16th, 2024, agenda item 54. Sincerely, Joshua A. Garcia, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. It makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you. And it wasn't at all like, again, mayors exercising power to take control of things. There was ambiguity. We even debated like what it potentially meant and what the council was trying to do, and we didn't want to, create a situation where it just adds for more debate, more confusion. So we thought we vetoed and instead came up with something. But I think there's conversation coming up as well in ordinance.
Correct.
There's more opportunity to clarify more, talk more, and if there's an order or an ordinance that the council is wanting to clarify further that's legitimate and more up to par, then yeah, absolutely. There's we can figure out what that is and do what we can to support it.
Okay. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion, with your permission, that we allow the public to speak for 2 minutes, if they don't mind, a time limit, and if they would give their name and address and certainly say whatever you'd like to say.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I just quickly want to remind everyone that technically this is not a public hearing. However, the motion was made, we're going to allow you to speak. And also, as the chair, it is my responsibility to ensure that the meeting remains civil and in order. And with that being said, if you want to speak, you could just come up to the mic, make sure it's on. State your name and your address, and then there's a 2-minute limit for everyone. Thank you.
I was also in this position. I'm like, where's the thing?
There it is. Okay, perfect. So Sarah LaRose at 77 Elmwood Ave. So I've heard a lot tonight, about taking responsibility for the approach that this all happened, because, as far as I'm concerned, the real problem that us homeowners had was the fact that we received these really hard to understand letters in the mail, and we were given 30 days, and we had the smoking gun of $300 a day fines over our heads. We weren't, even told that it was $100 a day for single family homeowners. And so as this process unfolded, there were a lot of opportunities for a city administration to pause and reflect and reassess how things were being carried out. First, when letters were initially sent, a whole bunch of homeowners just inundated the building department, myself included, with communication, just kind of wondering what was going on, wondering how we could possibly meet these timelines. So there was already a lot of feedback being provided about the unrealistic nature of those timelines. Then as this kind of progressed, the state building inspector got involved, and she was obviously not too pleased with the timelines that were being provided to residents. And then, even when initial fine letters went out, and kind of in that WWLP
You're at 1 minute, okay?
I'm sorry, what?
You're at 1 minute.
Okay, seeing that, 67 people or 67 properties out of 634 properties, those were the ones that weren't getting fined. When 90% of properties are getting fined, there's probably something really wrong with the process. And you would think that a reasonable administration might pause at that time and reflect and reassess at that time. And so I can completely appreciate and understand the desire to, hold consequences over heads in order to achieve the compliance you're looking for. But I hope you can understand the effect that adversarial approach taken had on homeowners, and quite frankly, what I can say is that an adversarial approach like that leads to an adversarial response, So I guess with that, I just want to ask about lessons learned and concrete action for further efforts taken to better collaborate with stakeholders involved.
Thank you.
That was really good. Or are we doing question? Are we answering, or we're not? Oh.
People want to speak, I think they should.
Yeah.
If they have a question, if you want to answer it, that's fine too, but.
Just got a quick question. One qualifies as intent to comply.
Can we just have your name and address, please?
Rick White, 31 James Street.
Thank you.
Just asking what qualifies as intent to comply.
And can you hold that question for later on? The answer to that? Yeah, the answer to intent to comply, but after we're
We'll
done.
answer at the end,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect. Thank you. That's a good question.
Stephen Bosco, 430 Appleton Street, Arrow Properties, Inc. I've been in the housing business for 31 years. I'm a housing provider. I've been here in the city for 19 years. I came here, I grew up in the Boston area. I came here, I chose to come to Holyoke. I chose to invest here. I chose to make this my home. I want to make Holyoke better. And, you know, I show up every morning. I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I'm in my office 7 days a week. Every day, I'm in that office. And let me tell you, it's a battle. It's a battle to be a housing provider in this city. To clean off the graffiti, to pick up all the litter, to deal with all the dumping, the overflowing dumpsters, the rodents and the roaches, the crumbling masonry on these 120-year-old buildings, rotting soil pipes. But you know what? I show up every morning and I do it with a smile. And I don't just do it for the buck either. I do a lot of things for community benefit here, like planting fruit trees, doing a recycling program. We build rain gardens to keep the rainwater out of the sewer. But most importantly, we charge affordable rents to our tenants. And I know a lot of other property owners do this too. I assiduously keep track of this, and I charge 70 to 90% of HUD fair market values to my tenants. Like the tenant that I'm thinking of right now at 241 Essex Street, apartment 4R, who's paying $925 a month with heat and hot water included for a 2-bedroom apartment. A retired woman who worked in the laundry up at the nursing home. And I could spend a half hour telling you about all the tenants I have that I charge affordable rents to.
You're at 1 minute.
Now, you know how many times I've had a tenant ask me about the size of the railings on a building or how long the emergency lights stay on for in the hallways? Never. I've never had a tenant ask me about that. But you know what tenants do care about? They care about affordable rents. They care a lot about that. Now, the city's proposing to fine me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of dollars because I haven't put in all these new systems and upgrades and things that were never previously required. And by the way, I have 2 other pieces of property that aren't in the city of Holyoke. I have a 4-family in Medford and 1 in Everett. I've never heard about any of this from those cities. So the idea that this is automatic, that every other city in the Commonwealth is doing this and that there's no municipal discretion as to whether to enforce this or not, that's just not factually correct. But you know what? Let's not talk about all these details. Let's just zoom out for a second and ask ourselves one question. We hear about a housing crisis all the time. There's not enough housing for people and it costs too much. And that's true. It's very true. I have a front row seat for this every day. How much more do you want housing to cost? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Nadorf, 150 Lincoln Street. Thanks for having us here to talk. I just want to say a couple of things. First, I spoke at the last meeting. There are 2 issues I think are truly important. One is that we need more time to get the repairs done. Certainly, I don't want to be out of compliance. I'd like to make sure it works. But contractors and the engineers and everybody else has just taken a lot of time to get in place and get the work done. Secondly, I got a fine, but I'm glad to see that there's some resolution to that, certainly in my case, so thank you. But what I wanted to talk about is that up until this point, I mean, I've owned property in other cities, never heard of this law ever, and I've been in the business a long time. But in Holyoke, and even in the other cities, I've always had a great relationship with the building departments and been able to talk to them and work with them in order to get the solutions done. But in this particular case, I find that the phones are busy. There's no answering machines. There's nobody responding when asked to come to the property and take a look. There's a refusal because they're too busy. I think that the building department could certainly work with us more to make this acceptable and get it all done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just have that one question to answer. Question,
Is that it?
question again?
Intent to comply.
Intent to
Intent.
comply with that.
Okay. So that is an application paid for with a fee.
But the application said do not
I understand that.
Can I have you come to the mic? Thank you.
But the application on it blatantly said do not comply unless you have all these other certificates in place.
And I understand that. However, we have to have the information in the system and be able to distinguish between who is not replying because they just don't want to reply at all.
So disregard your own paperwork.
Disregard that piece of it only. Okay? What I'm saying is we have show intent by applying for the certificate of inspection so that we know how to contact you and pay the fee, and that is going to show positive intent that you intend to comply.
So screenshots of phone records don't work?
Screenshots of phone records. No, sir. You have to have an application because in order to record and document information.
How about being on YouTube's Holyoke Media of me there asking questions of the people in charge?
Okay, may I finish?
Okay, go ahead.
Without having your application paid for on file in our system, we have no way of recording where the communications are happening. Okay, we have to have you in our system in order to, let me finish, in order to record and collect the documentation that you are going to be sending us that will show your intent to comply. Okay, the documentation of the phone calls, the emails, all of that. Otherwise, we don't have any way of knowing, that you intend to comply.
But your own directions are contradictive.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
But your own directions are contradictive on the form.
I've been here 2 weeks.
I get you. I'm just saying, I've been compliant.
So, real quick, right? Just to my understanding, right? Whatever was on the form before we made amendments, right? Am I correct? There's amendments now, so we got new rules, new proposals. So whatever's on the form before, technically, kind of is not the same thing now because it's a new process that's being implemented.
But I've also been compliant months ago.
I'm not the building officer, so I can't say yes or no. But ultimately, right, if you're saying, can a picture from your phone count, it kind of feels like you're not to a certain extent, right?
If I show phone records just speaking with
No, I get what you're saying. But like, I think for us here, what we're trying to do is there's a point where you put a starting point, right? And right now,
within 10 days of receiving the letter.
Listen.
If I may, through the chair, Mr. White has spoken to me several times, and he did apply. He is in compliance, and it just happened to be a certain period of time after the grace period. So I said, could you please show me any actions that you took after your application to move forward to get to a process where you were reaching out to contractors and, were they busy, like I said before. And so he did provide that to me, and then there weren't dates on it though. So I said, can you give me dates? And so he just got that to me within the last couple of days, and it's been a little busy at the law department. So I am trying to get through everything. I just have not gotten through.
So you're working with them, Jane?
Yes, already for weeks. Yes.
Okay. So this is circumstantial scenario.
I appreciate all your help.
I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Motion?
Sorry, Ms. LaRose, I don't want her to go unignored. Or ignored.
No.
I was going to say that concerns LaRose brought up was, I think, as I alluded to earlier before in our conversation, that it's a very fair concern, right? That letter and reading it and how direct it might have been and whatnot. And those are the things that we're trying to, and to your point too about letters gone out. There wasn't any public response that triggered, hey, we ought to look in, you know what I mean? It wasn't really. And so as the process went on and we got closer to near end, and then things started coming up is when we started talking about it. That coupled with the fact that we had Kevin, the former building commissioner, stepped down, and we initiated a search process, and we were interviewing candidates. So there was a lot of transition in between that moment. So I didn't really allow, I'm not a building inspector professional. I needed somebody who knew what they were doing to sit down with me to understand what's going on, and kind of untangle that and see, to your point, at some point we should have learned earlier and figured it out earlier, and it just didn't happen that way.
So much correspondence to the building department, and I know that I, CC'd the mayor's office sorry. I mean, there was a lot of correspondence with the building department. I know I CC'd the mayor's office. I know that, a lot of other people, got involved in all of that. So there was definitely information that was being presented, and I think the indicators were there. And at the end of the day, there's no sense in just kind of beating you up over what happened. But I think part of taking responsibility is part of taking responsibility is figuring out how you're going to do it better next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try not to. So when public pressure comes in, a lot of times I see that happen, right? Whether if it's a department head or an elected official, one concern comes in and everybody wants to quickly jump. I try not to jump the gun too quick and try to really look at the whole scope of the thing, and it takes time. I try not to shoot from the hip in that because if I intervene too soon at a department level, and that's the other thing too, when it comes to department level work with inspectors, when I intervene, sometimes it muddies the water a little bit. So I try to stay in tune with what's going on, listen, acknowledge, but also in that process have those conversations. Sometimes it's not easily as understandable or as quickly or whatever the case. Sometimes we get public pressure and illegitimate things, believe it or not. I'm not saying this is not illegitimate at all, but certain issues, somebody didn't like an answer, and so they'll go straight to the mayor's office to see if I can override it, right? And I don't do that. The only time I do that is if there's clear something's happening that's illegal. Definitely step in. But also things of this nature that are boiling up, and I try to pay attention, and then it just gets to a point where finally okay, let's do, what I mean? So that's kind of how it laid out. I wish we could have done something sooner. I wish the letters were a lot more clear. I just can't go back. So that's why I say I fully acknowledge. I know it's a building department thing, but I take full responsibility always when it comes to department level things. And obviously I want to be supportive to the departments. There have been times in the past, believe it or not, when people reach out to the mayor's office and certainly override something that's undermining enforcement, and then that impacts morale, or there's an unintended consequence or whatever. So again, when it comes to these things, I observe, I pay attention, I try not to intervene, I provide support where I can. And once we understand the whole picture, if there is an opportunity to say, wait a minute, let's pause for a moment, we'll certainly do that. And all the scenarios that we can talk about, they're different. They're vastly different, depending on the subject area. Here we're talking about building, and that's just kind of what happened. It wasn't at all that we were ignoring it or we didn't care, although it might feel that way because, you received a scary letter. There's a lot of money being accumulated. There's investments and equity involved. There's to the individual, it's extremely important, right? And so that's just kind of how it played out. But here we are now, and again, we're staying course. I think it was clear, but also it was a breath of fresh air to bring Leslie on and hear some ideas that she had, and said, hey, if it's not do something, if we can do it and it's not going to backfire on us with the precedent I was telling you about, we do that, and then all of a sudden this person over here says, wait a minute, then great, let's pivot where we can, and make it happen. I can't go back and honor the everything else that's happened before that, but I certainly take full responsibility, no question.
Like I said, I just hope going forward a more collaborative approach, is kept in mind.
No, totally.
Okay, if I could,
Oh,
with the one mic that works.
No, it works.
Oh, this one works.
Check that one.
We had two orders tonight, and one of them was the one with Counselor Devine and Counselor Jenny Rivera, that a 6-month period on all records be reviewed. So what I'd like to do with this particular one is make a motion that we review it in 6 months and see where we're at, see how many people have complied, whatever. So I'd like to make that motion that we renew it in 6 months. Review it in 6 months.
Second.
About 3 months. Counselors,
All those in favor?
3 months?
Oh, excuse me, the mayor would like to review it in 3 months. And the building commissioner, I have no.
So I'll make an amendment.
So is 3 months good to, instead of waiting for 6, you want to do it in 3? Okay, so I'll change that motion that we review everything in 3 months. So that'll be after the new year, okay? And,
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
And then the other order we had was from Councilor Jordan that the building department come in before the Public Safety Committee to discuss the new inspection initiative for 3-family homes and implications for owners. A general notice to owners should be published on the building department and city council website, inviting them to attend the meeting if they wish any feedback back. I think that was done tonight, so I'd like to make a motion that this be complied with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I hope everybody was
Madam
happy
Chair.
with what happened, and go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'd like to hear from a constituent who has raised his hand, who I happen to know and have worked with.
Oh, go ahead. Feel free to come to the mic.
Your name and address?
Tony DiBenedetto, 10 North Bridge Street, Holyoke.
Okay.
I'm also the
Flatbush.
owner of Medeo's Restaurant.
Amadeus. I knew you looked familiar. That's my whole life.
So one of my main concerns is I actually went to the City Hall to drop off my paperwork for the restaurant, and I actually asked for the application for the 10 North Bridge Street, which was due. I got a letter in 2017 or 18. There's a miscommunication between me and the property manager. At the time, I thought he was doing it. He thought I was doing it. Whatever. But my main concern is the way I found out about actually the fines were by asking for their application, and they actually, they told me right there you owe $96,000 or whatever it may be. But why did it take a year actually for me to find out by mistake really that I was being fined? I didn't get a letter, certified letter. Actually, I asked for a copy of it, and apparently somebody else signed my name. It was a mail person. So I'll show that to you. In other words, I was being fined for a whole year without me knowing.
Okay.
Is there a reason why I didn't get notification for that?
If someone else has signed for your letters.
What's that?
If someone else has signed for your letter.
Mail person?
Yeah. If
Mail person signs for, I didn't receive the
what I'm saying, somebody else other than you.
She's asking
signed.
for clarification from you. She wants you to confirm that someone else signed the letter. That's what she's asking.
Yeah, I absolutely.
Right.
That's,
Then that is part of the plan here. Okay, so you'll
can show that.
qualify for an extension based on that. If
He's in compliance now.
I am
right.
Right, so it was just the issue of the amount of the fines. So anything you can provide to me is super duper helpful. Like, I'll take any information that you want to throw at me.
all right.
And an email is great.
I know. I with people.
Just because I'm very much more able to respond quickly to
Right.
those. Even like I do so sometimes on the weekends, and
I can testify to that.
so if you want like the absolute quickest way, this may not be true for every department or even everybody in the law department, but the quickest way to reach me and get a response is certainly via email.
Okay.
So do that. Send me everything you got. If you think it's too much, just send it. And just send me what you think would be important, and I can follow up with you.
All right, thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure to meet you, because Amadeus is to me what Caprice is to Josh.
Yes. Well, I love Amadeus.
Yeah.
And Elliot's my brother-in-law.
So he owns Capri Pizza?
No, Amadeus.
Oh, Amadeus.
Yeah.
Never mind, it's a long story, but Me and some friends are going to be going there.
No. Motion, if there's nothing else,
Yes, motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
Thank you,
very
everyone.
I want to
much.
thank you all for coming.
Everybody that was here tonight,
I
thank you.
hope there was plenty of information here, and I do want to say any other questions you may have or any other concerns, please reach out to the building department, and the law department, and of course, your city councilors. I'm your city councilor. I just met you.
See you, Mark.
And again, thank you all for coming, and I apologize to the ones that had to leave and didn't get to
Good
speak.
job.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good night.
Good night.